Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a really unique curriculum. It explores Earth not just as some random rock floating out there in space, but as a perfectly engineered machine. We're going to break down how this source material frames our planet as a system designed by a creator, how these massive planetary engines work, and how this specific framework connects meteorology to moral purpose. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the divine mechanics, weather versus climate, the amazing water cycle, Earth's systems in action, and finally, education with true purpose. Let's jump right in. Section 1, the divine mechanics. We're zooming in on the grand design of the atmosphere and water systems. The source material actually uses Psalm 147 to anchor its scientific lessons. It's fascinating because long before we had satellites or advanced meteorology, this text captured the core idea of Earth's design. It frames it as a perfect balance of heat, moisture, and wind meant to sustain all ecosystems. Literally every cloud and drop of rain is presented here as part of an intentional provision to make life, like the grass on the hills, possible. So what's the big idea here? Think of the sun, the atmosphere, and the water cycle as the gears of a massive, perfectly calibrated machine. You absolutely cannot have our weather or climate without all three of these interacting flawlessly. The sun is the ultimate power source, right? The atmosphere acts as the medium, and the water cycle is the delivery system. Working together, they're what makes life on our planet a reality. Moving on to Section 2, weather versus climate. We're breaking down the short term versus the long term. Now, people mix these two terms up all the time, but the difference is actually pretty simple. Weather is the short-term condition of the atmosphere. It's what you get today. Like if you walk outside and get caught in a crazy snowstorm or a sudden downpour, you are experiencing weather. Climate, on the other hand, is what you expect over years and years. It's the long-term average. Think of a desert's continuous dryness or a rainforest's constant humidity. That is climate. A great way to remember it: weather dictates what you wear today, but climate dictates what kind of wardrobe you own. So, you might be wondering, and this is actually a critical question from the curriculum's homework, if the sun is literally millions of miles away, how exactly does it act as the engine driving this whole global process? Let's break down the mechanics here. The sun provides the energy, sure, but it heats the Earth unevenly. The equator gets a whole lot more direct heat than the poles, and that uneven heating, that is the spark that turns the engine over. Because when air gets warm, it rises, and when it cools, it sinks. This constant rising and sinking creates all our wind and pressure systems. So the sun is the power source, the atmosphere acts like a global heat distributor, and the hydrosphere, which is Earth's massive water system, acts like a giant energy storage battery, holding onto that solar heat and moving it around the world. All right, Section 3, the amazing water cycle. Let's see this hydrosphere in action. Watching this cycle in motion is honestly amazing. You can see exactly how energy is moved and stored as water changes form. First up, evaporation. The sun's heat literally turns liquid water into invisible gas, lifting it up into the atmosphere. Next is condensation, where that water vapor cools down and forms clouds. Step 3 is precipitation. That's when the water gets too heavy and falls back to Earth as rain or snow. And finally, runoff. That's where the water flows over the land, back into rivers and oceans, bringing life to plants, animals, and people along the way. It's just a brilliant, continuous, closed-loop system. And why does all this matter? Well, understanding this giant planetary machine isn't just trivia. It's absolutely essential for our survival. By mapping out how solar energy drives the water cycle, we can predict natural disasters, protect our communities, optimize how we farm to feed populations, and wrap our heads around broader climate changes. This is highly practical, boots-on-the-ground knowledge. Which brings us to Section 4, Earth Systems in Action. So, what does this actually look like in the real world? How do the sun, the atmosphere, and the hydrosphere interact to create the vastly different environments we see around us? I mean, how does the exact same planetary engine create both a steaming jungle and a freezing blizzard? Well, we can see this engine producing wildly different results all over the globe. Take tropical rainforests, for example. Intense sunlight evaporates massive amounts of water from the trees and rivers, which leads to super reliable daily afternoon rain showers. It's a classic pattern for a hot, humid climate. Or consider ocean currents. The Gulf Stream acts like a massive conveyor belt in the hydrosphere, moving warm water thousands of miles and keeping places like Europe way warmer than they technically should be based on their latitude. And finally, cold fronts. This is pure atmospheric drama. When heavy, cold air slams into warm air, it acts like a giant wedge, violently pushing the warm air straight up to form clouds and severe thunderstorms. And finally, Section 5, Education with True Purpose. Here's where the source material ties everything back to biblical morality. This brings us to the core philosophy of the heroesmartacademy Godly Learner series. The curriculum argues that education without morality is actually harmful. The premise they put forward is this: what's the point of being highly educated or understanding the vast mechanics of the climate if a person lacks the moral compass to use that knowledge for good? According to the text, without a solid foundation of morality, humans will just continually make bad choices that cause pain to themselves and their communities. The source material connects this idea directly back to Romans chapter 8. It draws a really interesting parallel here. It argues that just as the earth has physical laws governing its climate, there are spiritual laws governing human lives, and aligning with those spiritual realities brings true peace. The text notes that a mind governed by the flesh brings death, but a mind governed by the spirit brings life and peace. As we wrap up, the curriculum leaves its students with a profound question to ponder. If there's an intentional design perfectly ordering the mechanics of the earth to sustain life, balancing the wind and the oceans, how might leaning on His wisdom order the mechanics of your own choices? It's a fascinating look at how this specific educational framework ties physical science directly to a student's spiritual journey. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep marveling at those incredible mechanics all around you, and I'll catch you next time.